And of course, with Donald Trump, he projected a certain amount of strength, I think, but he also projected a certain amount of unpredictability. So the things that he was criticized for in terms of doing things differently, and maybe even an element of erraticness about his approach to foreign policy, all contributed to this notion of deterrence, and so in particular in the Middle East, people wouldn't know necessarily how Donald Trump would react and how the U.S. under his leadership would react, and therefore they were much more deferential to him than I think that you're seeing with Biden. So whether it's the Middle East or whether it's Chinese expansion and aggression in Southeast Asia, or one of any number of things, a growing assertiveness, if you will, coming from the Russians to a degree that we haven't seen, frankly, since the old Cold War days when they were the Soviet Union. I wonder how much of that is actually a reflection of the fact that Joe Biden is the president of the United States now and not Donald Trump.
Well, a lot of things have happened in, what was recently, they sort of went over the first 100 days, but the problems they're having, the crisis at their southern border, which Donald Trump had basically almost ended that influx of illegal refugees coming in. And, of course, it's going full tilt now with Biden, stopped the building of the wall and whatever. And he signaled, it's virtue signaling, but he signaled that things were going to be different. And the world didn't take long to catch on to that. And people sort of know what they can get away with. And if you're going to allow things and there's the promise of prosperity and freedom and opportunity in the United States or in Canada for that matter, and you're not going to have a border policy. I mean, that's why we're concerned about the Roxham Road debacle. Not sure exactly what's happening today, but, whereas now a Canadian coming back to Canada, to their own home, and they're healthy, and they get off a plane, might be forced against their will to go to, one of these hotels, quarantine hotels, and pay thousands of dollars and so on. Whereas not that long ago, at least, people who had no permission to enter Canada were walking across the border, being taken to hotels that they didn't have to pay for. And, we're in favor of legal, proper immigration. We should have, Canada's a big country. We can absorb more immigrants. But it should be controlled, and people around the world should see it as a privilege to come to Canada, a privilege that they need to earn and to come through the proper channels. So this government has messed things up on a variety of levels with our immigration policy.
Now, is there any particular aspect of our immigration policy that you would like to see changed, you or your party?
Well, there should be some numbers put there. I think the number of immigrants coming across, at least prior to COVID, I don't know what the number is right today, but I think that number is a larger number than Canada is able to absorb and to assimilate and to make, give the opportunity for those people to become knit into our society, become working members of our society. So that number should be controlled. We should have a qualification process for immigrants. Now, there's a difference between immigrants and refugees. We recognize that a refugee, you are rescuing someone from an untenable situation at home where they're facing probably death. And, of course, this government, probably some of the people at highest risk around the world are Christians and Jews in Arab countries. And this government, Prime Minister said explicitly, no, I'm not going to make any special provision for those at the greatest risk, but we're taking in refugees coming from some of the Arab world without doing any of these checks, even on their health status. Now, like I said, right now a healthy Canadian coming from the United States is subject to these kind of onerous requirements and impositions on their freedom, whereas these folks are coming in and getting the kid gloves treatment. Well, former leader Ron Gray says that's Trudeau's training, liberals in training program. So, of course, they hope that immigrants will be so grateful for him being the prime minister and letting them in that they'll become lifelong voters for the Liberal Party. And sadly, that may be true.
Well, but it's funny because if you focus on conservative values, traditional conservative values, faith, family, community, those kinds of things, new Canadian communities, new Canadian voters tend to respond positively to. So, this is kind of, from my perspective, I have a lot of trouble understanding why there is such reluctance within the federal Conservative Party to talk openly about these issues. They're almost embarrassed by their members of Parliament who do talk about them, it seems sometimes, because these are very attractive, very concerning issues to new Canadians. So, there tends to be this idea, this notion that if you come from another country, you're going to be so happy that the Liberal government has let you in, assuming that it's a Liberal government, that you're going to be a Liberal voter for the rest of your life. I'm not sure that I agree with that assessment. And I'm not saying it's your assessment, but it's certainly it's something that you hear in conservative circles, and I don't know. Maybe you have a view on that. I'm just not sure where it comes from.
Well, I think on some of these issues, certainly it's true that a lot of the immigrants do share actually our values on life, family, and freedom, but people don't always vote according to their values. Oftentimes, people are misled to vote according to the perception they have of the government in charge or a particular political party. I know that's very true with the NDP, that a lot of the voters for the NDP, actually, if you were to ask them where they stand on protection of innocent human life, they would agree with us. But when it comes to voting day, they have come to the conclusion that the NDP is going to help them with issues of employment or health care or some aspect of life. And so their feelings about life and marriage and don't always enter into their ballot box decisions. But anyway, we certainly do agree with and believe in immigration to Canada. As we mentioned earlier, I'm an immigrant myself. I came in with my parents. But Dad had to go through quite a process, applying, and he had to have a job lined up. There were things that he had to do to show that he was not going to be a burden on society, in fact, was going to contribute to society. And that should be our gold standard for immigrants. For refugees, we should look at those in most need. But I think we have to recognize that we can't be the caretaker for every downtrodden citizen of the world. It's just Canada doesn't have the resources to do that. We can help where we can, and I think that's what we do as individuals. You and I probably both contribute to a number of charitable causes and whatever, and you and I can't be a donor to every cause out there, or can't help every poor person that we run into, but we want to help those that we can, and in a kind of somewhat of a organized manner to be a contributor.
Now, when my father applied to come to Canada, he had to demonstrate before he was allowed to come that he was not a communist. It's not sympathizer. What's the word I'm looking for here? Yeah. Instigator or whatever.
Yeah.
So, it just goes to show you how standards change over the years. But it's like there's none of that anymore. Nobody has to demonstrate that they're going to be a good fit for Canadian society. And possibly one of the reasons that is because there's really no longer a a clear idea, at least amongst the media and political elites, of what it actually means to be Canadian. And maybe we can get into that a little bit in the final segment. We're just coming to the bottom of the hour, so we're going to have to take a break anyway, Rod.
Sure.
So our guest tonight in the studio is Rod Taylor from the Christian Heritage Party. He's the leader of the party. And if you're listening to the live broadcast, we'll be back in a few minutes. If you're listening to the podcast, well, thank you for joining us, and join us tomorrow morning for part 4 of the Nick and Joe Show on ThinkRadio.ca.